Lekker man. Good morning. Thank you. And yeah, welcome everybody. This is it is a slight deviance from the planned session, which my esteemed colleague Mr. Brown is going to just explain to us in a minute why we're doing this Q&A session. But yeah, we're going to try something slightly different today in terms of the presentation. I've got a whole bunch of pictures which cover all different kinds of installations and things that can go wrong, and as the conversation moves along, we hopefully will be able to bring up a relevant picture as we speak. So there's no particular topic this morning, but yeah, and Steve's talking about that. I know that we've got Herman Strauss here, we've got Lorraine Moy here, we've got Steve Cheevers. We're in proper company here this morning. Morning, Steve, you there?
Morning. Yes, we certainly are. Then I'm just going to jump into Lorraine. Lorraine's going to jump in and just tell us about what we've been doing in terms of a couple of initiatives this week.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I decided to do a try run on in the KZN area. So we started with the installers meeting. This one is get up to your guys. It's not for the business owner, because at the end of the day, the guys are the ones that are on the field, on the ground, that are doing the installations. And we had a very good turnout, obviously with limitations because of COVID. But a lot of the guys went away with a lot more understanding of these common fails, because we went through the 13 most common fails that we find as auditors. And so next year we'll be kicking off again in KZN, and then we're going to go around the country with the same program. And what happens with that one is that the licensed plumber gets 2 CPD points for the installer that he sends to the training session. Then another one that we have with Brad Berkey, we started in Belita yesterday, is for the contracting plumbers. Really trying to understand those contracts like the JBCC and the Master Builders one. And he goes through it and he explains the importance of having a contract in place as a contractor. Because, thank you.
Right, back to you, Richard.
Okay, well, I'm just throwing a few things up here now. Recently, we had a bit of, when I say we, I'm talking very generally, and there was a discussion going around whether or not basin fixations were acceptable as fixations for geysers, and that is not as simple as saying is this piece of string 3 meters long, because there are various designs of basin fixations with various materials, with various coatings, with various strength levels. And here's just an example. And the problem is that what could constitute a very solid fixation for one basin fixation manufacturer, let's drop a well-known name, perhaps like a Raw or a Fisher or something. Maybe they make something which is really, really good. On the other hand, you could get some stuff that looks like this. And so to generally and sort of say, look, basin fixations are okay for fixing geysers, this is the kind of thing that starts to creep in. And I do want to remind you that we're doing it slightly different today. So the pictures, you're going to see me dragging stuff and everything. There's no PowerPoint presentation, but they're all relevant. So have a look at this, and you can clearly see that this guy and the previous one, that one, has never been manufactured with the intent to keep such a big weight in or on the wall. It's a plastic thread. There's no ways that works. So when somebody says it's okay to use basin fixations, take it with a pinch of salt and make sure that whatever it is that you are installing is going to be fit for purpose. Yes, that's another example of not so smart geyser hanging methods. And yeah, this is genuine. This is out there. So another one there. There's an example of not doing anything at all at the bottom. This we see often. It is often a matter of space restrictions where you can't actually get to the thing because the cupboard is so small. In this case, you can clearly see that's not the case, but in fact, that is against a timber cupboard in any event. And I mean, there's just, yeah. So there's the discussion's open with regards to what sort of fixations to use, but I would urge us all just to wear our reasonable caps, and just ask the right questions and interrogate the thing properly before you sort of say, no, it's okay to use it, or it's not okay to use it, or whatever the case may be. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything there.
Richard, thanks for this. I think this is one of the important things where we can very easily, let's say, overlook the obvious. We have to. Yeah. It's obvious. If you use fixations, use a fixation that were designed for this purpose. If it's a fixation that were designed for a different purpose and you're not sure whether it can or cannot, don't use it. I mean, remember, this is safety. Safety is a critical. We know. I don't have to explain to you the weight and the what can go wrong when it does start falling off the wall. There's lots of things. So this is most definitely you have to apply additional caution. Use what was designed for this. Remember, when geysers are tested in a test laboratory, there is a test where they've been hung by their feet and a weight put on them to see that they're strong enough. But when that test is done, it's fixed rigidly with strong metal bolts. Yeah. So when in doubt, go bigger and stronger.
Yeah,
that's all I have to add.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we professionals, we need to, as I say, interrogate what it is that we're doing, what we're using. So if I don't know that any of us will really, if we're honest with ourselves, really look at that plastic bolt and plastic sort of back nut arrangement, and if we're honest with ourselves, say, oh no, that'll be fine, that's okay, it's meant to be on there. So I think we just need to be sort of cautious and honest with ourselves. I was in discussion with, yeah.
Sorry, just a quick thing. Looking at the plastic back nut, and you might want to try and argue, can it not, what can it handle? I mean, imagine yourself having to defend this. Something went wrong. Yeah. Are you confident you will win the argument? You will, well, win a legal argument for that case. To say, I know I can prove to you that thing really was strong enough and it was right for me to use that, considering that something went wrong. So use that as a check for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a good point. To put yourself in the position of having to win this argument and defend yourself in a court of law, and think of the questions that are going to come to you. No, but it's appropriate for the installation. How do you know it's appropriate for the installation? Did you get? Have you got any sort of literature that says it's appropriate? No, but I mean, I've used it before. No, that doesn't fly. So just interrogate yourself, interrogate the thing. I was in contact with Roll about this, and I asked them directly, the technical representative here, I asked them directly, one of you guys put me in touch with him actually, and I said, look, is it doable? I mean, can your, what you deem a basin fixation, can it hold a geyser? He was quite confident that their product could. He sent me a brochure, and it looks very, very solid. And I'm not saying that it can't, but you would want to just get all your ducks in a row and have your, as Herman said, your defense sorted before the time. All right.
When you talk about that, I'd be glad to see that one, because again, of the two geysers that I had complaints on last week where they fell off the wall, it was a bit of a mixed grill in terms of fixation. So, and the argument was, well, I only had 2 bolts and I found these 2, and then the other one he had 3 roll bolts and he had one of those basin fixations. So we know what it is. It's the guy's looked and somebody's lost it and gone, and then it's fallen off the wall. So I think the clear thing is there's sufficient input out there in terms of the load and the shear that these bolts have, and there's a massive amount of literature out there. And again, if we're going to look at standard practice for securing geysers to walls, etc., we're going back to a roll bolt, and it's been there and it stood the test of time. And then we're starting to deviate for whatever reasons we have, and this is the type of problem that comes out. So I think we just need to make sure that stick with what you know best. And I'm sure things move in terms of technology, But for me, yeah, I stick to the tried and tested.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a question has just come up. What's the minimum thickness of a bolt that may be used? I don't think there is anything in SANS that that will point to that, Robert. Again, yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it, guys? Because you know, we know what sort of weight or what sort of stresses this thing is going to be up against, and I mean a 6mm nail-in anchor certainly won't work. But a you know 25mm raw bolt is probably overkill. But you know, so where is that happy medium?
There's a generic guideline that you can always look to. Remember, in all engineering design, everything is designed for its mate. Put it that way. So if there's a bracket with a hole in it, you know the bolt that needs to go through that hole is the bolt that just about fits. So if it's intended to have a 8mm bolt, the engineer will make the hole maybe 9mm, just enough so that there's a little bit of play around that. So use that as a guide. It's a common guide. So if you have this and you see, but your little bolt or that you try to use just sort of hides away in this big hole, in this big slot that's been provided, yeah, it's a good guide that thing is not big enough. If the bolt just about fills the hole, just about almost fills the slot, then it is the intended size. And always try to stick with the intended size.
Fair point. And I mean, just if we look at this picture, I know I've got another one on there, but here's an example of the thing that's gone wrong. Now, this might or might not be the fault of the fixations, or it might be the substrate into which it's bolted. But the fact is that it's a heavy thing that you're trying to support. It's not just 20 kilograms. So we had a picture. I think a lot of us, on a lot of the groups saw that picture of the geyser that fell out of its casing yesterday. I haven't got it here, but okay, that's another problem. it's just some of the things that we challenge with every day. But yeah, it happens, guys. I mean, stuff falls down. So if we can defend it, and if we can say, look, I've done my absolute due diligence, and this is as good as I can get it, well, then you're okay. You know, it's okay.
I can just add as an interesting analogy or something else to look at in a different industry. Fall arrest, safety equipment, fall arrest equipment. There's standards for fall arrest equipment to be tested, and one of the standards are the brackets. In other words, if you work on a roof and there's a bracket mounted to the wall, it's the bracket where the worker will hook his safety harness onto. So there are the whole set of tests that they do on those brackets. Add a hook, drop a weight, see if the bracket can take it, and so on. But one critical part in those tests is that bracket must be mounted with the intended fixations on the intended wall type or on the intended medium on which it needs to be mounted. So that it not only tests the strength of the bracket itself. I mean, the bracket normally can take much more than the test handle. The weak point is normally the point where the fixation goes into the wall, or what the wall itself looks like. That is very, very important. Don't get blinded by just using the right size of fixation or the fact that there's a strong bracket. The whole joint is there, and as I say, the point of failure is normally where the fixation goes into the wall.
That's a very good point. It's like a system, isn't it? You know, the bolt could be bulletproof, but you're using a second hand or an inferior plug or in fact the substrate could be crumbly, and yeah, so the parts of the system are not going to fit. Yeah, that's a very good point. So it's a whole rather than just one part of the whole. You must look at it holistically. There's a couple of questions here, and I'm just going to go left field. Gentleman's asking, and I'm not going to answer this one. I'm going to allow my colleagues to answer it. Should I use, I'm going to paraphrase, should I use cement to fix a conventional toilet onto a conventional floor? or even though those toilets have got fixation holes, I have my own opinion on this. But the gentleman's concern is that you know, if you only use the fixation holes, it leaves the thing a little bit wobbly, and if you use cement, it tends to leave the toilet unserviceable in terms of, you know, being able to remove it to replace the pan connector, for example. I have my opinion, but I want to put it out there. I'm a bit old school, but let's hear from, I don't know, Steve, what's your opinion?
Yeah, so I think, look, as we were saying earlier, technology goes and it moves on and everything else. And I think that, you know, if we go back to, as they told me yesterday, I've been doing plumbing for 73 years, and we had 2 attendees that came back and said, my God, that I did 73 years in the plumbing game. You know, and he's still going. I mean, I really felt like, okay, what the hell's going on here? But if we go and look at it, I mean, that was the standard practice in terms of placing your pan. You would do it, you know, with an engaging mix and etc., and have it 10 mils off the floor, etc. So that was the standard practice. And then, you know, again, in those days, we didn't have all these fandangled new systems and everything else. It was either high level or low level, or coast cup or whatever. So you had that, and then, you know, you could do your pan collars or whatever. So we now progressed to securing with these types of fixations. So for me, in terms of those fixations, it's when you start to use those, you know, if they've been installed properly and correctly, it's 100% fine. But I would go one step further, because again, as we all know, you know, men don't have good aim and everything else. So is to actually seal that. So when you've actually sealed it, leveled it, you know, use a marine silicone or whatever the case may be, to also rest it and clean it up afterwards. So that is my standard way of doing that in terms of those fixations. Again, just to make sure that we measure correctly, because we do find that yeah, we measure and it's slightly out. So if those fixations are done correctly and your floor and your tiling is being done and it's level, you really shouldn't have those types of problems in terms of it being wobbly or whatever the case may be. But you know, for me, the key thing is we're looking at hygiene and everything else. So if you're just using those fixations without any sealant between the pan or the base of the pan and the tiles, then yeah, you're going to have a rather unhygienic sort of situation in terms of water and everything collecting underneath that. It is certainly serviceable in terms of being able to remove it into the pan collar, because ideally that's really what it's going to boil down to, is that serviceable item being the pan collar. And there are so many items out there today in terms of doing that. So, you know, I don't say that one is either better or worse than the other. I think it's just the application and installation in terms of how you secure it. And yeah, for me, certainly a lot better, you know, in terms of it's got a crack, loosen 2 screws, get that silicone out a little bit, put it back. Whereas in the old days, we had to go in with a hazmat suit and a 4-pound hammer and hope we didn't cut ourselves to pieces trying to break it out or break tiles. So there's certainly advantages of doing that. But at the same time, is to look at making sure that it's sealed properly and everything else. So whichever one blows your hair back, so long as it's right and it's safe. That's really where we are, Richard. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I can draw a quick analogy again, and it's applicable to, I think, many of these questions. I've been in many conversations where we had a big laugh at instruction manuals, especially from American companies. I mean, you get these instruction manuals and it's warnings all over the place. One of the ones that I particularly had a laugh at is an electrical oven. I mean, where it had a warning that says, if you open the oven's door, do not stand on the door. I mean, really, it's obvious, it's common sense. It shouldn't be necessary to put something like that in an instruction manual. Now, luckily in South Africa, our legislation isn't that ridiculous that that's necessary. But there is a level of understanding where you say, you know what, the common person will know, do what the common man will do. There's an acceptable, I'd say, level of don't be stupid. And that, maybe I shouldn't have used the word stupid. It's the first one that came to mind now. But there's an understanding that something is used for the purpose for which it is intended. And use that logic when you decide. Now the standards doesn't say whether the toilet pan should be bolted to the floor or cemented or whatever, but the method that you applied, can you justify that was fit for purpose, that was the intended way of doing that? And that's the norm that you have to apply. I mean, same with fixing it to the wall. The standard doesn't explain what you can and what you cannot use, because that's supposed to be common practice, commonly used in the right way. And that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I'm personally, and this is just a personal thing, I'm old school. I would, if it's a concrete or cementitious substrate, even if it's tiled, I'll take those tiles out. Well, I cut them in the right way, and so that they overlap underneath the rim of the glue, and I cement that thing down. I know that it's difficult to service especially a bent pan connector. If that goes, then you're in trouble. But if it's a straight out pan connector, there's a thing called a Foxy fit, which ticks the boxes in terms of a flexibility. It allows you to do it in situ. You clamp it on the spigot of the pan, you clamp it on the pipe, and it's smooth inside. So it's not the concertina type thing, which is against rigs. The Foxy fit for me is the ideal straight repair kit. But if it's a bent one, yeah, I agree that you're in trouble, and now you're forced to either remove the toilet by force, or you're going against rigs and using a concertina type thing. Neither of which is an ideal situation. I always use those fixation holes for timber floors, where it's a timber home and it's a mezzanine level or something like that, and I've got a timber substrate. Then I use those, but that's personal. That's not. Please, this isn't. And as we've all said, it's not something that you've got to do. I think we've all sort of got our personal preferences. Okay, well, there's a lot of comments about the bolts. A gentleman said here that he had installed a brand new geyser. I'm not going to mention from where, but the feet started coming loose from the geyser, and within a couple of hours, the feet were still on the wall and the geyser was on the floor, and smashed a client's washing machine. And the supplier in question came out and replaced the geyser, but they refused to pay for the washing machine. So go figure that. Yeah, guys, this is a picture that I wanted to show. I had a picture earlier on just of a simple PVC tun dish with a TP discharge going into it and a PIRB going into it. And that in itself is cause for concern, because we know that the temperature of TPs is such that it's going to cause problems with that PVC. And if you remember, I don't know if you saw, but that particular PIRB overflow was shoved deeply into it, was not discernible, was not visible. You couldn't see it dripping. So there were two problems with that. But look at this for an incredible thing. I mean, these are TP overflows from a group of geysers in a single roof space, which is above a block of flats. So you've got 2, 4, 6, 8 geysers there. All the TP is going to a nice. Even the gully itself is not even properly inserted into whatever fitting that is. It's duct taped in. You know, this is yeah. It's actually quite unbelievable sometimes what we come across. TP
like the guy upstairs and polycop and everything else. I mean, I think he went down to the spa and got some wrapping tape, and then he passed by the DIY shop and picked up some wire, and then he shares in terms of what he purchased. Yeah. So again, you know, one of those "what was he thinking" type moments.
And you know, the challenge we have, yes, it was done like this, and there's all kinds of arguments that come out. It was before X date or whatever the case may be. There's no excuse. But what happens now is that somebody comes to replace one of these geysers, and guess what? That's how I have this photograph, because you know, somebody went in there and I need to replace the geyser. Don't know. Boom. This is what we've got. Now, what is the new installer? Well, the installer of the new geyser, what does he do? Is there space to take this TP out? What kind of a how big, red and bold must that notice of non-compliance be to the body corporate? Yeah. So this is the challenges, or these are the challenges that we face with regards to the existing non-compliance, and especially TP discharges in flats, it's a nasty one. It's a nasty one, because often we are forced as installers to walk away from something like this. I mean, body corporate's not going to approve this in the same day. Yeah, spend 15 grand on rectifying all these TPs. I don't think so, not today. We're going to walk away from this, and yes, we're going to notify and all the rest. But yeah.
But Richard, I had the same thing yesterday. So, from an insurance assessor. So the building was built in 2006 or whatever the case may be, and the plumber had piped the TP into the discharge from the tray. And subsequent to that, the geysers obviously failed. The TP went, and it's basically damaged the property, etc. And the question was asked in terms of, at the time of building, was this a requirement in terms of taking out the TP individually with the tray outlet and everything else? Because now there's considerable damage, and it was clear. I mean, going back to 2001, and in terms of when the standard was made, it is a legal requirement in terms of doing it this way. So there's a challenge now, because obviously it's quite a few years later. But again, it was one of those things that was sitting up in the roof, a little bit of a time bomb. It's now gone, destroyed the PVC, and caused considerable damage to the property. And now the insurers are looking at it and going, well, hold on, this was not done correctly from the get-go, and now there's a challenge. And this is the type of thing that we come across on a daily basis. And again, it's up to us as the professional plumbers to make sure that the client is aware of this, and it takes away from the risk. So yeah, it's unacceptable the way that things do. And we, as professional plumbers, need to ensure that when we're up there, we give the client the correct information and the correct guidance, and we protect ourselves. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. We're here to protect the consumer and ourselves. And, it's very clear in terms of the CPA, the Consumer Protection Act, in terms of how we need to do that. And there's sufficient information out there to assist the plumbers in terms of supporting the statements that they made based on the standards. So in this instance now, you've got a big hoo-ha between insurers and assessors out there and plumbers and reports that have been done. And we need to just be vigilant in terms of how we do things. In terms of where we were, thank you very much for attending. We'll wrap it up. I think Herman, Richard, Lorraine, thank you very much for today. So, Herman, anything in terms of closing? Richard, Lorraine?
I'm not going to spend more time. I hope you all have a great day. I hope this was valuable to you.
Ditto. Same from me.
Thank you very much for your time, guys.